I'm Kimberly Collins. I'm one of the co-organizers of Free Code Camp OKC. We meet here every Sunday pretty much to learn basic web development. Today the topic is an intro to HTML. So we're going to have Caitlin Stewart come up here and tell us all about it.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am Caitlin Stewart, and today I am going to talk to you about HTML. So first, let's start off by talking about what is HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the standard language for creating web pages. And what HTML does is it describes each part of a web page to your browser, like Internet Explorer or Chrome. So in HTML, there are a few tags that are required parts of a page. These are HTML, head, meta tags, and body. Now wait, what are those? So what you saw before on the page previous were tags. They have a start tag and an end tag. And the start tag had the angle bracket, the information, and then a closing angle bracket. And the closing tag had the angle bracket, a slash, then the information repeated, and then a closing angle bracket. Now, tags are not case sensitive. You can be uppercase, lowercase, a mixture of the two. What I typically see is that pretty much they are in lowercase almost all the time, but if you wanted them to be capital or mixed, you definitely could. Now, like a bulleted list, these tags can nest inside of each other for structure. And what that means is, as you can see here, you can have one tag open, and then in the middle of that tag, you can put yet another tag, and then you can close them both. So they'll nest just like this bulleted list here. Now, some tags do close themselves. Remember before I mentioned that you had the opening tag with the angle brackets, and then the closing tag also with the angle brackets, but with the slash at the beginning. Some of those tags don't require both of them. And some of them only require an opening. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So first, we're going to go back to talking about all of the required pieces for an HTML page. So we're going to start with this HTML tag. So you can see it has the angle brackets for that opening tag, and then you'll see on the closing tag, you'll see the slash at the start. And that slash is what indicates that the tag is closing. Now, what the HTML tag does is it indicates the HTML portion of the page. So you'll put the opening tag at the beginning of your code and the closing tag at the end of your code. And this signifies to the browser that, hey, the stuff in between here is HTML. Next, we have the head tag. And this tag identifies the section where your meta tags go. Now, any code you put in this section isn't visible as part of the page. So if you put, a story or text or something here, it's not going to show up. That's not what the head tag is for. So let's go ahead and look at some meta tags, tags that are going to go into this head section. So we see this big tag up at the top. It's very, scary and globby, but let's not worry about that right now. So this goes in the meta tag section, and it indicates that this is an HTML document. You can see up at the top, doc type HTML. And this says to your browser, hey, this is an HTML document. You should know what to do with this. And what the other information is the document type definition, or DTD. And what that does is it defines the structure, elements, and attributes that are allowed. It shows your page kind of what information you can use. Now, this is actually not an HTML tag, but it is just instructions to the browser. Now, this might look scary. It's a lot of words, but don't worry. We're going to come back to this in a bit later. Now, I also want to let you know that I have been doing HTML for a while, and I have never, ever, ever typed one of these by hand. I've always copied and pasted all of this information. So don't worry about it being big and scary and long and including all kinds of stuff, because you don't have to worry about that information. So next in our meta tags, we have this one that has the character set. And this indicates that you are using UTF-8 encoding, which is a type of encoding. Another example would be ASCII or UTF-16. Those just kind of specify different types of encoding. Once again, not something that you have to worry about, but you do want to declare that to prevent encoding issues. For example, if someone is using, a different browser than the expected, Internet Explorer or Chrome, by declaring this tag here, it helps the browser, not turn your code into gibberish or cause weird encoding issues. So you want to be sure to include this in your code. All right, next we have the title tag. This is also a meta tag, so these are still going in that head section. Now what the title tag is it is where you put the text that's going to show at the top of the browser. This is not displayed on your page. It's not, the title or the heading for your page. This is what goes up at the top. Okay. Now we're out of that head section, so we've got kind of the top of our page going here. The next tag that we need for a basic HTML page is the body tag. Now this is going to contain the body area, which has all of the elements in your page. So all of your content lives within this body tag. Wait, what's an element? You may have heard me mention that the body tag is where your elements go. Well, an element is the opening and closing tags and the information in between. So you can see I have below the header tag, and then this is a header, which is the text that would show, and then the closing header tag. That whole line is an element. So your opening tag, the information in between, and the closing tag is an element. Some of the most common elements are headers. I've got some examples here. Paragraphs, links, lists, and images. Now, you may have noticed that lists, there are kind of two sections there. I have two types of lists here, an unordered list and an ordered list. The unordered list is the first one you see with the UL. Now, how an list works is you start with your first tag, in this case, the UL for unordered list. Then within that tag, you have an LI for each item, and then you will then include all your items and then have a closing UL. So let's kind of go into an example. So you'd have UL, your opening tag, then within that, next you'd have LI, then the text for list item 1, then you'd have closing list item, then you'd have another LI, then you'd have list item 2, then you'd have a closing list item, and then if that's all the items in your list, you would then include at that point the closing UL. So your list would be nested like that. And I believe that I mentioned images are pretty common. Now, there are some tags that don't have both a start and an end tag. 3 examples of these are BR, HR, and image. Now, you may have noticed that these have the starting angle bracket, BR, the slash, and the closing angle bracket, for example. Now, according to what I read online, the HTML specification does not require that slash at the end, but I have found that browsers like Internet Explorer are very finicky and want that to be closed. So for me, best practice has been to always include that slash at the end. And also to me, it's a visual indicator that this is the end. Because the more time I spend working with HTML, I get used to looking for the opening tag and then trying to find with that slash the closing part of it. An image is also listed here. Now, we've talked about elements, which we know is the opening tag, the data within, and the closing tag. So a specific type of an element is a semantic element. Now, these elements clearly describe their content to the browser and the developer. And that developer is you. Now, an example of a semantic tag would be form or table, and we can easily tell what will be in those tags just by looking. You see by looking at form that that's going to contain a form, and table probably has a table. So some examples of elements that are not semantic elements are a div and a span. What even lives in there? You can tell by looking at it that it's just kind of a big globby thing. What is that? I don't know what a span is. I don't know what a div is. That's why they're not semantic elements, because they're not clearly describing what you expect to find inside. So what's next? We've gotten through tags and elements, and we want to build on that. So let's talk about attributes. Now, attributes provide additional information about an element. So an example of an attribute would be width, height, and style. And these give more information to your HTML tags. Now I'm going to take a minute here and talk about the style attribute. And what it does is it allows you to include CSS in your HTML element. Now what CSS is cascading style sheets. And they are a way to make your web page look nice and have consistent styling. And I'll go a little bit more in depth into that later. But the style attribute is a way to add style to your HTML element. And those three, width, height, and style, are just some of the many attributes which vary by tag, and there are tons of choices. So let's talk about some more attributes. I'm going to start off by talking about href. Now this is used in links, which is the A tag. And what href does is it indicates where your link should go. And I have an example of a full element down here. And so we have, for our A tag, we have A, and then we have our attribute, which is href, $, and then in quotes, we're including the address where the link should go. Now, I want to note that that's actually not what's displayed. This Visit OKC's FCC page is what would be displayed. And then at the end there, we are closing that A tag, that link. So for an image, there are several attributes that you want to use. And I'm going to start with the source, or src. You can see that src equals troodon.jpg, and that indicates that the source is the file name for our image. This is what the image is called on our computer. Another attribute I want to talk about is the alt attribute. And you can see I have here alt equals a troodon dinosaur looking mighty angry with that end quote. Now what that is when the image can't be displayed, for example, if it can't be found, you've typed the name wrong, this text is what will be displayed in its place. Now this is also what is read to those that are using a screen reader. So in making the web accessible to everyone, because we want the web to be open to everyone, no matter what their abilities are, including that alt tag is very important. Because if you have a person using a screen reader, an image isn't going to provide any information to them. But by giving detail about what your image is in that alt tag, that is what will be read out to the user. And so it's very important to include this, and it also helps you as well. If you have very unfortunate file names like image1 or image2 or the date that your cell phone camera took the picture, by putting that alt tag in there, you can know what should be here. What is this a picture of when you're looking at the code? And if you need to reorganize things, it's helpful to have, hey, I know what this is a picture of. I can just move this. So now that we feel a bit comfortable with HTML and writing HTML, what tools do you use? How do you go about doing this? What you'd want to do is use a code editor. Some examples of code editors are Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, brackets, Notepad++, NetBeans, Eclipse, Atom, Sublime Text, and many, many, many more. Now, everyone kind of has a personal preference, and each of these kind of have different features. They're all going to allow you to write the same code, and also you can use, like on Windows, you can use just regular old Notepad, a text editor. You can just type straight into there. But a lot of these provide helpful hints like IntelliSense to help predict what you should type and help you complete your tags. So let's take a look at a code editor. And let's see some code running in the browser, and we'll use the developer tool to inspect the elements. So I am going to switch over here, and I am going to open up Notepad++. And we have here, this is the boilerplate HTML. And what boilerplate kind of means is this is the basic information. You didn't really put a lot of thought into this. This is just kind of your basic layout. So we have at the top that doc type that we talked about earlier. You'll see our HTML tag. I'll make this bigger. Not that much bigger. No, not that much bigger. You'll see the HTML tags indicating that within that HTML, within those tags, we should find our HTML code. You'll see the head where we have nested those meta tags for our encoding, and the title, which I've filled out here, totally not social media. We are on task at work. And then you'll see the body, which currently has nothing in it. So this is just the basic layout for code. And I also want to show you two Visual Studios. Are you open? Yeah. Just taking some resources here. I will flip over and show you on the Mac side. This is that same code in Visual Studio for Mac. And it includes, you can see there are colors there, and it helps it kind of get laid out better instead of just opening it in Notepad. Where are you, Windows? All right. Thank you, Visual Studio. Just enjoy that. All right. So what we're going to do is let's go ahead and open up this boilerplate HTML in the browser. So you can see we had nothing in the body there, and our web page has no content. But up here at the top, you can see that our title is there, and that's where it goes. So this tab says totally not social media. And I also want to show you a little bit about inspecting the elements in the browser and the developer tools. So I happen to have on my computer the Free Code Camp website, and this is the resources page. It has a lot of links, and here's what it looks like. Hopefully we are on Windows. And there's the shortcut for F12, or you can come up here in the menu and go to More Tools and Developer Tools, and this will help open this up. This also works in Internet Explorer, Firefox. Most browsers have these tools built in, and they're very, very powerful. So we have over here the code, and so you can see without, yes, this is installed on my computer, but without having to have this file stored on your computer, you can do this to any page on the internet. So let's say I want to take a look at this resources thing. We can right-click on this heading and click Inspect, and we can see over here that it is an H2. We can see that it has an ID of resources, which is an attribute, and we can see that the text is resources. So let's say I want to call this not resources. All I did was click on that and type in there, and with a typo. And you can see over here where it changed it to say not resources. Now this is really helpful for like with an image, if you have it and it's giant, instead of going back into your editor, making those size changes, saving it, going back into the browser, realizing it's the wrong size, you can go into these tools right here and make quick changes here, and they're displayed immediately. You can make all kinds of changes here, whether you own this website or not. All right. Chrome. So I showed you that we can make and preview those changes and why that's a great tool to do that in the browser. But I do want to note that changes that you make in the browser don't get saved on your local computer. If I went to that file on my computer, we changed that heading to say not resources, but if I went and looked at the file I have saved on my computer that has the code, it's not going to reflect that change. So it's very important that you remember that when you change something in there, you need to copy that code into your file for it to be saved. All right, I'm going to take a minute to talk about HTML5. We've covered, basic HTML. We've looked at what the boilerplate starter code looks like. We've gone over tags, attributes, and elements. So next step is HTML5. Now this is a bit of a joke, is how to tell HTML from HTML5. The first step is to try it out in Internet Explorer. Did it work? No. Then it's probably HTML5. Now, Internet Explorer is a bit finicky with HTML5 elements, but I do want to tell you that you should always pay attention and test in multiple browsers. For example, if something is supported in the latest and greatest updated edition of Chrome, your user may be using Internet Explorer 5, and it's not going to display the way you want it to. So that's something you want to consider when you're picking your tags and attributes, is which browser they're going to work best in. Now, you could just trial and error and check in every browser, which gets a bit tedious. But I want to show you on W3 Schools, there is on most pages this browser support section. And I have the href attribute pulled up here. And you can see it shows that it is supported in all of these browsers. Now, sometimes it'll specify only Internet Explorer 5 and above, but this will give you good information to determine what your best course of action is here. You may have to do something a more complicated way, or you may have to consider your audience and think that, my users are the most tech-savvy people. This only needs to work in Chrome. And anyone else that's using Internet Explorer, our response would be, use Chrome, that's where it works. It really just depends on what your goal is. But it can definitely be frustrating to find things that don't work in your browser. So I've gone over kind of the caveats of HTML, but it really does make things simpler. It's not something that you want to avoid just because it might not work perfectly for everything. Do you remember that long and ugly doctype tag, the one I told you I had never typed before? In HTML5, you just need the opening brackets, exclamation point doctype HTML. That's it. You don't need to include any of the DTD information, which is so much simpler, easier to type, and not ugly. And I did type this one. Along with introducing that beautiful doctype, HTML5 has some new page structure elements, and these kind of help define your page and give it structure. There's main, section, article. I feel those are a bit self-explanatory. And there's also this header one, and you can see that this is spelled written out header instead of in traditional HTML you have H1, H2, etc. But in HTML5 you have header written out. And this header can be used both for the entire document or web page or just a section. And the same applies to a footer. You can have a footer for a section or the entire page using this tag. Now, the aside tag is content that would be aside or beside your regular content. For example, you have a section with all your main information, but you'd have like a sidebar, a separate section on the side, which would be what an aside looks like. The nav tag includes your navigation links, and the figure tag, which is going to be kind of self-contained content For example, if you had an image, you want to put it in here, it'd just be kind of a nice wrapper for a figure. You see them in, textbooks, figure 1. Now, one of the coolest things about HTML5 are these form element attributes. Some examples are number, date, time, and what these do is on a form, they give elements a type. So let's go ahead and take a look, and that will help better explain one. So I have a page here, and we will open it up in the browser called Form. I have this sweet Troodon dinosaur up at the top, and we have this dinosaur type of Troodon, a dinosaur name, which is a text field, and let me show you this code for this number of legs section here. That is the boilerplate HTML. Let's look at it in Notepad++. You can see that it's kind of easier to read. The colors make things stand out. So on the dinosaur type, we see that we have the start of a form. It's one of the great things about a code editor is when I clicked on that, it showed me the end tag. You can see they're both highlighted. So in this form, we have dinosaur type, and we have this input of type text, and we gave it a name. And the name is not the label for the text box. The name is how you would reference this element. And we gave it a value. You can see back on this page, the dinosaur type, it already has Troodon typed right in there. And that's what the value does, is it pre-populates that field. Then we have this dinosaur name, which is just another text input, and I gave it a name of dino name. Now, we have this number of legs input, and this is not the actual code that's displayed. I think this is an older version. But we have this input type number. There's also right next to it an input type of text. So when we look at this page, these boxes look about the same. But when I go to click on this, you see these arrows over here. You can increment or decrement numbers. In this other field, I could just type gibberish, which would not be very useful for my form. How would I know how many legs this dinosaur has? One of the great things about HTML5 is it also prevents users from typing unexpected content. So you saw before this would only be a number. I am typing a bunch of keys on my keyboard. Hopefully you can hear them. And those should not go in there. And so it prevents users from providing the wrong type of input. Now, I do want to show you something else quickly. Now, remember the source for this image is just troodon.jpg. Now that file lives in the same folder as my form. This is the HTML document for my form. That's where the code is. And in the same folder, I have this Troodon image. This right here is the JPEG that you're seeing on the page. You note that they're in the same folder. If I delete that by deleting it, and I go back to Chrome and reload this page, we're going to refresh it, you can see that that dinosaur is no longer there. But thankfully, my alt text kicked in, and it has that a Troodon dinosaur looking mighty angry. So if you have, and how images work is it kind of looks at the folder where your code is stored. So if my picture weren't in that folder, maybe I moved it, maybe I deleted it, your alt text is going to get your back here, and it's going to display that. It's going to help your page make more sense, because we put that image there for a reason. And so that's a bit of that. We'll go back to my slides here. One of the ways you can do a layout is with an HTML table. Now this technically works. There are a lot of websites that use tables, and it doesn't necessarily look terrible. You know, they have columns and things like that. It's definitely very functional. You could do it, but it gets really painstaking. You have to add each and every attribute, which is, your width, your height, if you wanted special formatting like colors, every single time. It gets really, really tedious. Now, I mentioned CSS before, and CSS is going to be a better way than handling a table layout. And what CSS does is it allows you to write that style code once and apply it to many, many elements. So you could write CSS for all of your table headers that you wanted them to be bright purple and super giant and have a yellow background because you want your page to be as garish as possible. And you could do that with CSS and do it once instead of writing that code for every single part of your table. Now, another part of your HTML page is the script tag, and it looks just like this. And what the script tag does is it's used to define client-side code. Now, what does client-side code mean? Client-side code is code that is run on the user's computer, and this is not where your web page lives, which is on the server. Typically in the script tag, you're going to have JavaScript. Now, the reason that you want to have code, client-side code, is take, for example, you are making a calculator, and you have them enter 1 plus 1. Now, if you didn't do that client-side, it would take 1 plus 1, it would send that data to the server, then your server would use its resources to calculate that answer, then it would use the internet to send that all the way back to your user's computer. Things can go wrong, it's slow, it uses unnecessary resources. In that script tag, you can include JavaScript to use the resources of their computer without going out on the internet and going back in to do those calculations. So inside that script tag is where that would live. Now we've gone over HTML a bit. I want to go over some resources that I've used before. The first resource I have is this HTML and CSS design and build websites. It's by John Duckett. I have it here if you want to flip through it. You can also flip through it on Amazon, I believe. And it has a bunch of great images and visual things. And some of the websites that I've used. Obviously, freecodecamp.org. Skill Crush is one I've done, and it goes over a little bit about the basics of HTML. This is a link to their HTML tag cheat sheet. I brought one of these for everyone. This is something I have up on my wall, and it includes, the tags are divided. It has, the content, the tags, and a little bit about them. It's something that is very easy to reference. And then, of course, there's w3schools.com. It's where I get a lot of information. You can see they have this nice try it editor where we could go in here and edit this tag and change things and try it out right here. It also has, great information. I forgot what this tag is. So we could go and look at this and see, what is this? What's it do? And here's one that just happens to not be supported in HTML5. So you can look at the browser support. It has lots of tips and notes. So I'm going to take a few minutes and go back over to Windows here. And let's go ahead and make some changes to this form here. So we have this open here. And we can say, so the title, which is going to show up at the top, we can say dinosaur information. And we can save that. And we have just this one. This is the other input. I didn't give it a type, so it defaulted to text. But you could also, this will look hideous because we haven't put any break tags in there to break up the lines. We can also have a password type tag, and we'll watch what that does. As I mentioned, one of the great things about code editors is that it has this kind of predictive text going on. So, see, it's helping me with attributes. It kind of gives you some choices. And it also typically sort of notices when you do things wrong, sometimes. And so we're going to close that. And we're going to save this. We're going to go back into Chrome. And we still don't have that dinosaur because I deleted it. But now we have this password field. And whenever I type information in here, it doesn't show directly on the screen. Now, this isn't necessarily super secure, but it prevents people from, looking over your user's shoulder, etc. Now, let's go ahead and fix this Troodon image. So we are going to go back into this file, and I happen to know that it is in my pictures file. So let's see, pictures/Troodon. We will save this, and let's see if that fixes it. It does not, because, let's see, do I need a tilde at the front? Maybe. I know you're in the pictures folder. I have you right here. When this works, it works well. This is just a random HTML page. It's not kind of expecting that structure. So I'm just going to drag this in here, documents. But you can see that that's kind of one way to indicate where your things are stored, is you're going to kind of need to be specific. Because of course I did have that file, but it didn't know where to look. And you have to be sure to tell it exactly where to look. So now that I have moved this in the same file as our form here, we will go back to the correct Chrome and refresh that, because this is different code, and I have told it it is not where it's looking. So you want to be sure to pay attention to your source, because if you have that wrong, it was looking somewhere different. Now it's going to look in the same folder where our code is, and we have our dinosaur back. So that's kind of a little bit of a demonstration. I do want to show you one of the cool features about using a code editor, and I will find Visual Studio on here on Windows, because I know the shortcuts in here. So let's open up our HTML file in Visual Studio. So we are going to go to File, Open, and I'm just opening a file, just a single HTML file. And I know that it is in Documents and Form. So we're going to open it up, and we see our code here, and it's a little bit hard to read because the nesting isn't clearly displayed. In Visual Studio, the quick way to format this so it makes sense is Control-K, D. Now you can see what that did was that organized my HTML. You can see the body is here, then within the body, the information is indented. So we have our picture, and then a line break, and then we have this form here. Then the information within the form is indented. This definitely makes the code easier to read. You could write this all on one line, but that's not going to be useful to you or anyone that has to change this code after you. So it's always a good idea to use indentation to make your code easier to read. White space is free. This indentation, it's free. So definitely do that to help organize your code, make it easier for others and you to read, especially once you start nesting and nesting and nesting. It makes it much easier to find the section you're looking for and look at everything within it. So these are some of the resources. These slides will be online, so you can access these links, as well as Free Code Camp has on fccokc.com under their resources section. These tutorials and courses, books, things like that. All right. Now, I want to tell you it's October, and I am super excited, and not just for pumpkin spice. It is Hacktoberfest. And what Hacktoberfest is a monthly event, or not monthly, annual event sponsored through the month of October by DigitalOcean. You can go to hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com. And what this is really a drive to support open source software. We've all used open source software, something that's available free on the web. OpenOffice is an example. And contributing to open source is great. It's provided to you at no charge, and the people that are working on it certainly aren't getting paid. So you should definitely contribute and do your part. Now you may be thinking, well, I just learned HTML. What can I do to help? I have some resources for Hacktoberfest. I recently saw a talk at 200 OK, which is an Oklahoma web development conference by Clement Ho, and it's called Why Should You Contribute to Open Source? And it goes over some of the reasons of why, but it also, some of these links are from that talk. There's first-timers only up for grabs, and these will help you find projects that want, new people like you to contribute. They're willing to help you, or they have some easier issues. So what are some of the things that you can contribute as someone who's just learned HTML? Something you can always contribute is adding to the README or how to contribute. As someone that's new to code or new to the project, you're going to be the best set of eyes because you're not going to know step one. Everyone that's been working on this may know, well, yeah, you go here and then here and then here. But as a new contributor to their project, you'll know that you need to include those steps. And that's just documentation. That's just simple, typing a Word document and making changes. You can definitely do that. Another thing is I recently added, you can see this link to Linda right here. You guys all have the skill to do that. So let's go ahead and inspect this link in the browser here. More tools, developer tools. Whoa, that looks crazy. That's kind of what, this is actually out on the web, and this is kind of what the code looks like. And you're thinking, oh no, that's scary. That's not what we talked about. Well, I really only want to look at this part right here. So I am going to highlight this part, right-click, and click Inspect. Oh, good. It's taken me over here. You can see it's taken me to some nice, friendly HTML tags and elements that we remember. So we went over, look at this. This is an unordered list. One of the great things about Chrome is that you can see all I'm doing is mousing over these, and it highlights the sections. So you can clearly see over here what you're picking. Okay, a list item. We went over those. I feel comfortable with that. Look, okay, a link. We went over those tags, and you can see I just gave it a title, which is Linda, which is that part that's so dark blue you can't read. And then in that, as a link at the beginning, then I just typed some text information, and then I closed the tag. And I submitted that to FreeCodeCamp's GitHub, and they took that pull request and merged it in, and it is now on their website. So that's something you definitely have the knowledge to do right now, and if you need help with GitHub or anything like that, there are definitely people here that can help you with that. I can help you with that. So it's definitely a helpful thing to do. So you found a great resource. Going and doing this quick step is a great way to share it with the group. And one of the best things about Hacktoberfest is if you do 4 pull requests, and those are changes to code, so you submit your code change for someone else to pull into the main project, you get a super awesome shirt. And just for trying and signing up, you can also get some free stickers. So you're giving of yourself and helping others, which is always a great feeling. But free t-shirts are also great too. So you guys definitely have the skills to do this. So I'll make these slides available online. FreeCodeCamp's a great resource. Everyone here is definitely here to help. And I have these HTML tag cheat sheets if you want to have one as paper or flip through this book. So that's just a little bit of HTML in a nutshell. Thank you.
Do y'all have any questions for her? Yeah, can you take that and then give that to me? I have just a few announcements to go through, tell y'all about some upcoming meetups at other groups. I would definitely recommend that you check out if you can. And hopefully I can get this showing. If you're not in our meetup group or following us on Twitter, I would definitely recommend that. And the links are going to be here in a second, hopefully. That means I can't see. That's cool. Okay, so yeah, if you're not in our meetup group, join it, and you'll get announcements about our upcoming events. We have one scheduled for next week that's going to be about CSS. If that is something you already know about and you'd like to share your knowledge like Caitlin did today, definitely let us know, and we'll accept a speaker to talk about CSS next time. If you're not following us on Twitter, that would also be a good idea to just get announcements about our group. We're here at Starspace 46, which if you're not familiar with, is a co-working facility. So we're in their event space here where most of the Techlahoma events in Oklahoma City meet. So there's always something going on every week, something here. And if you want a tour of the co-working space, we can get Ava to show you what that's all about. And again, all of these follow on Twitter. That's a great way to keep up with what everybody's doing. We're sponsored by Techlahoma. They provide the space here, and they're the ones that put on all these other groups like OKCJS, OKC Sharp. So check out their meetup page that lists all those groups here and in Tulsa and in a couple of other cities also. And again, on Twitter. Slack, I would definitely recommend Slack. If you're not in our Slack channel, you can go to this link to sign up. And then we have a channel just for Code Camp, free Code Camp. There are also channels for JavaScript, design, C#, all sorts of different things. Jobs also I'll mention later. So if you're not there, I would definitely recommend signing up. You'll agree to a code of conduct and enter your email address. And we also have instructions on how to get to Slack and how to use Slack on our website, fccokc.com. Jobs. There's a job board at jobs.techlahoma.org. We're mostly here because we're looking for a job, possibly even your first tech job. So if you're interested in that, check out their job board and then also the jobs channel in Slack. And if you're not sure how to get to a channel, again, the instructions are on the website or several of us can help you with that. Videos, we're streaming live to Twitch and the past videos are there also, and then at some point archived to YouTube. So if there are topics that you're interested in learning more, or you missed, like I missed a few that I really wanted to see because I was out of town. So I've watched them on Twitch, and then also you can find them on YouTube. A few that I really recommend, there was our meetup last week was about an intro to web development. So if you're wanting to get into web development and you missed that, that'd be a good one to find. This is on twitch.tv/Techlahoma. A couple more that I really enjoyed. There was one at the game developers group called Game Design and Learning, and it was really about sort of educational psychology, and I found it interesting, and I'd recommend you check it out, even if you're not into game design. And then one at the OKC Ruby group. That's a group that might sound intimidating if you don't know Ruby or you're not learning Ruby. They actually don't cover Ruby all that much. They cover other related topics, and I thought this talk was really good. It was called Let's Break Code Together. So go to Twitch and find these videos. These are 3 recent ones that I would really recommend. Some meetups coming up this week. Tomorrow, there's a group called Design Dev. It's not part of Techlahoma, but if you're interested in front-end development at all, I'd recommend going. They talk about more design concepts, and they usually have dessert, so I like to go. On Tuesday, I believe the Java group will be meeting here at lunch. Wednesday, the Python group is meeting. Thursday, Ruby's going to have a security roundtable. So there's, like I said, not every single day is there something here, but a couple times a week you can get free pizza and listen to a good talk. So if you can fit these into your schedule, I would really recommend it. I'm personally hosting one on Thursday evening called Coffee and Code. That won't be in here. It'll be in the conference room. I can show you where that is if you're not sure. Here are a couple more. Linux on Friday. The open source hardware group is one that I run. That'll be Saturday afternoon. So ask me if you have questions about it. And then we'll be back here a week from today at 2 o'clock learning CSS. So again, if that's something you do know about and would like to share, please let me or Daniel or Carson, one of the leaders of the group, know. Or you can talk about that in the Free Code Camp channel in Slack. And then any women who are here, or if you know women who are interested in learning to code, we have a group just for women called She Codes OKC. You can find that on Meetup. And if you're really inspired by Caitlin's talk on Hacktoberfest, we're going to be working on pull requests to get ourselves those T-shirts. We're really excited about Hacktoberfest. So that'll be in 2 weeks. Meeting here after Free Code Camp OKC, which will be at 1 o'clock. The She Codes OKC group will be at 2:30. Do y'all have any questions about any of this or questions for Caitlin? I think we'll go ahead and turn off the stream, and sometimes we get more questions afterwards, you know. So that's the end for the Twitch stream. Thanks for anyone who's watching there. And we'll see you next time.